watching the recording, I'm just going to say welcome again. This is a virtual coffee break, and this is our first themed virtual coffee break. So, as a Precious community, a community all about empowering women of color across the UK and worldwide, we have been hosting weekday coffee breaks every day at 3 to 3:30. It's been really lovely, just seeing other faces. It's been really refreshing. So do please join us on other days as well. But obviously today we have a themed coffee break going on, which I'm excited to get into in a minute with the amazing Lisa Maynard Atem, who we're going to talk about a little bit more. If you don't yet follow us on @PreciousOnline, please go ahead and do so. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the things. And Lisa's going to talk about her social handles in a minute as well. But if you've got anything that you are taking from this that inspired you, any quotes, any tweets, make sure you tag us. Spread the love. The other thing I just wanted to highlight really quickly is we've got a Precious Nights Online happening again on the 7th of May. That's a Thursday. Precious Nights normally happen monthly at the British Library, and they are great networking and empowering events where we have a panel of women who have previously won the Precious Awards or the Precious Lifestyle Awards, just sharing their stories, sharing their experiences, and they've been such great events. And when the lockdown happened, Faluka and I said, well, we're just going to take them online. So we had the first one of those happen at the beginning of April, which was really fun. A couple of our panelists are on this chat. We've got Kizzy, we've got Camille just joined, and Arit. They were on the panel a month ago. So head to the link in our bio on Instagram, RSVP for free, tell your friends. It's going to be a really great night. That's coming up. But enough of the housekeeping. Like I said, we're so excited to have Lisa with us today. And Lisa is a social media strategist, is founder of the Social Word, and she's going to tell us so much more about all of that. And when we talked about what topics people would be interested in for this coffee break, social media was the first thing people mentioned. So we listened, and what we're going to do is Lisa and I are just going to have a little bit of a chat. I'm going to ask her a couple questions, and then at the end you can ask specific questions as well to anything that she's talked about, or even anything she hasn't talked about. So we will be getting right into it. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thanks. Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you so much for being with us today. So you are currently sitting in Didsbury by Manchester, is that
Yep,
real?
Didsbury, Manchester. Yep, and it's
Right.
a lovely day, so yeah.
Up north, wonderful. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you're from, why you do, what you're passionate about, and maybe what your number one lockdown tip is.
So I am, as I said, I'm Lisa Maynard Atem. I work as a social media strategist. I run my own agency called The Social Word, which has been going for just over 2 years. So how I got into social media, going back a long time ago, I actually used to work as a fashion stylist, and I didn't have any money or means to pay a PR company to promote me. So I set up a Facebook page or Facebook group and a Twitter account, and I just started promoting my styling services through that. And as time went on, companies were getting in touch and asking me how I was doing stuff, and I was just giving away advice for free, and I was learning myself, so I was just kind of just sharing my knowledge and learnings with other people. And then I actually had a contact at Harrods who I would meet up with for coffee on occasion when I was in London for work. She offered to introduce me to people in London. So I ended up going for an interview at Harrods and was offered a junior buying role, if I remember rightly. Yeah, junior buying role. I don't know the first thing about buying, and my maths is terrible. So I went back and I said to them, look, I don't think I can offer any value from a buying perspective, but I think I could from a social media perspective. I'd actually been monitoring their social media for about 6 months, and it wasn't great at the time. And just to put it in perspective, at the time, I think I had just over 4,000 Twitter followers, and they were only 1,500 followers ahead of me. Now, for the most famous luxury department store in the world, that seemed a bit strange. Yeah. So they were like, okay, send us a proposal. So I wrote a very short, a 4-page proposal, which I found the other day and has spelling mistakes in it, which is embarrassing. Anyway, so I sent this proposal and kind of forgot about it, to be honest, because I figured a company like that, they're not going to employ a little Lisa. They're going to give it to some big fancy agency. So I sent the proposal off. I went on holiday to Ibiza with my friends, forgot all about it, came back 2 weeks later, and I had an email asking me to go in for interviews. So I went through 8 months of interviews to get the role. So wow. I interviewed from January until August, and I started with them in September. And when I started, I only had a 3-month contract. So I basically moved from Manchester to London for a 3-month contract. I started working for them on the 1st of September 2010. And I think at the time they had about 30,000 followers across Facebook and Twitter. They didn't have Instagram.
Wow.
So I just basically wiped all the social media channels, existing channels that they had, clean, and just started again, just kind of listening to people, getting people's feedback in terms of what they wanted to see, what they wanted to hear on the social channels, and just really started engaging with people and reaching out to people, because they hadn't done that before I joined. They were just pushing out messaging, but they weren't being social, which I mean, I've always find quite strange when companies do that. Anyway, the social media grew, the Twitter and grew quite quickly. So in the space of, I think, 4 or 5 weeks, I'd taken it from 4,000 followers to 10,000 followers. And they created the position of social media manager, and they offered it to me. And I figured, you know what, I'll never get an opportunity like this again, so I'm just going to take it. So I took on the role. And then in October, I'd been doing a lot of research into Instagram. And this was a time when Instagram only consisted of the 5 people that worked there. Yeah. And I'd been talking to them, and I had to, whenever you wanted to set up a new channel, communications channel for Harrods, you had to put a business case forward. Wow. So I pulled a business case together. I went to the MD and the board and said, look, I think that, this was a prediction. I had no idea, and I had no realization at the time that it was going to come true. So I went to them and I said, look, I really think that Instagram could be the lead channel one day. So they approved of setting it up. So we set up the Instagram channel, and it grew quite quickly, because obviously this was pre-algorithm. So it was very easy to acquire followers. So we went from 0 to 100,000 followers in like a couple of months. Wow. And it grew massively. And obviously, because Harrods is very famous, that would have obviously played a massive part as well. But the channel grew really quickly. And my goal was, because I'd set that channel up, I wanted to get that channel to 1 million. So, which, when I think back now, was quite a tall order. But anyway, so we worked tirelessly, just kind of like engaging with people, putting out content that covered the whole business, be it fashion, women's wear, menswear, children's wear, food, beauty, home, everything. Wow. And we hit 1 million followers. It was the 23rd of January 2017. So it took us about 6.5 years to reach 1 million followers, and that was pure organic. There was no paid activity. Obviously, don't buy followers or anything like that. Don't believe in that. So yeah, it took us about 6.5 years to acquire 1 million followers. And once we'd done that, I kind of decided that I wanted to move on and do something else. I just kind of wanted to spread my wings. I wanted to kind of do lecturing. There were lots of things that I wanted to do that I couldn't necessarily do when I was working for one organization. Yeah. So I then left Harrods in November 2017. And then in December 2017, I set up the Social Word, and I've been working on that ever since, just advising companies, various different companies, on how to use social media. I lecture at the London College of Fashion. I do talks and panel discussions on social media, and yeah, that's basically what I've been doing for the last just over 2 years. So that's a bit of a history on me.
What an amazing journey. What an amazing accomplishment. I know we can't hear each other, but I feel like that deserves a little applause right there for this queen. Amazing. So I thought, before we get into sort of the technicalities of social media, and you're going to share a little bit of advice, and then everyone's going to be able to ask some questions, as an expert in the landscape, I thought it would be quite interesting to hear from you what you felt that the effect of lockdown has been on people's behaviors towards social media, people's relationship with social media. And yeah, feel free to speak both to, I guess, the personal impact on people, as well as businesses, organizations. How has lockdown, or how is lockdown changing the landscape?
I think lockdown, it's had a massive impact on everybody. I don't think anyone can say it hasn't affected them in some way. And obviously, people's usage of social media has increased exponentially. Like, people are spending 14, 15 hours on their phones. And a lot of businesses, like one of the businesses that I work for, they're a chain of barbershops. Now, obviously, they've had to close all the stores temporarily due to COVID-19. So now that they're really pushing themselves on social media, and what you're finding is that is what a lot of businesses are doing. They're now having to kind of dial up, if you like, their digital strategy because their physical spaces are currently closed. And yeah, I get that, and I think that's a great thing. You do need to maintain some presence so that when we come out of lockdown, you know, your customers and your audience are still familiar with your business. But I do think it's almost information overload for me. I think it's great, and I understand why businesses have to do it. And I do think as a business, you do have to have a presence on social media, especially now. But I think for me, when I look at content from a business point of view, I do feel with some people, there's a sense of panic. It's like, oh my God, our physical stores are closed, our physical business, because we need to put stuff out on social media. I get that. But I think in doing that, some businesses aren't being considered in terms of what they're sharing. I think, you know, their eagerness to get content out and to maintain their business presence, if you like, is driving people to do things that they would not necessarily do if their businesses were open. Like, you know, people jumping on every single trend, every single meme. Not every trend out there is appropriate for your business. You know, I'm the first one. I love a good meme. I love stuff like that. But I will only use that from a business perspective if it's appropriate to the brand. I would never just pull out a meme and use it for something, you know, without thinking about it. So I do think there are a lot of people they're almost panic posting, like, oh, let's post something. And I'm not criticizing people, but I think you need to stop and think. I always say to people, if you can't think of 3 reasons why a piece of content should be if you can't think of 3 reasons to publish a piece of content, then you shouldn't publish it.
Wow.
I just think people need to pause and really think about what their content strategy looks like. What does the information that you're sharing look like? And then from a personal perspective, I think for me, mental health is a big, big thing. I personally don't advocate for being on your phone too much. As somebody who works in social media, I just think it's a bit unhealthy. What I tend to do is I tend to have pockets of time where I will check my phone. I'll check my clients' accounts to make sure nobody's complained about anything. There's nothing that needs actioning, and then I don't look at it. What I don't tend to do is spend hour upon hour just scrolling through my phone. I don't think that's healthy. And I think especially now, you have to really, you know, it's about mental wealth. And I don't believe that being on social media consistently all of the time is good for you from a mental health perspective. And, you know, unfortunately, there are a lot of trolls and there are a lot of unpleasant people out there, and not all of us have broad shoulders. So I think especially with lockdown, which brings its own pressures, you know, that with the pressure of social media thrown in, that can be quite a lot for some people. So what I've been saying to people is, you know, do practice social media distancing. Don't spend an excessive amount of time on social. I get that some people might be completely alone. They might be self-isolating totally alone, and they want connection with people. I totally get that. But I really would not advocate spending hour upon hour on your phone. I just personally don't think that's very healthy.
Yeah, it's very good. I just want to quickly come back to what you mentioned about the panic posting,
Yeah.
which I think we've all seen happening, and some of us have probably done with our businesses, let's be honest. I mean, not me, obs, but you know, you never know. Um, but how do you then cut through? Because you did say, you know, it is important for a business to shift, to keep, you know, maintain your customers, maintain the people that you want to reconnect with when lockdown is over. How do you cut through? Could you maybe give a couple of practical things? You mentioned the 3 reasons.
Yeah.
You have 3 reasons, but what are maybe a couple of other practical things that you would say to help people cut through the noise?
Yeah, well, firstly, your content should do 3 things. It should engage, it should educate, and it should entertain. That for me, those are the foundations of all content. If your content isn't doing one of those 3 or all of those 3, then you shouldn't be posting it. Also, you should be thinking about, you know, right now, in terms of lockdown, for me, it is about selfless marketing. So it's how can you add value to people? How can you help people? Like I started something called the social sessions for people who don't necessarily have an understanding of social media. And it all came from, the idea was inspired by my mom. So my mom is somebody who is having to isolate for 12 weeks because she has a number of health issues. So she has to stay home. and she was saying the other night she'd love to have something that explains social media in a very basic way, like what is social media, what is a hashtag. Just because I know what those things are doesn't mean everybody does. So that's where the social sessions came in. So I created that. And basically what I do on a daily basis is people submit questions and I will just post answers to those questions. Obviously, I don't name anybody, it's completely anonymous, but some people, sometimes they have questions and they're too embarrassed to ask. And, so in that instance, I just say to people, DM me or leave a comment under one of my posts. If you have a question, doesn't matter how basic it is, I'll answer it. So I think the key thing to be doing right now during lockdown is thinking about how can you add value? How
Amazing.
can you help people? It's about giving rather than, I think it's more about giving than receiving. So really for me, what I'm doing now, especially now, is I'm making sure that all of my content is educational. It's giving people something. And
Yeah.
if I'm not, then I'm encouraging them to come back and feedback to me and say, look, if something's missing, just tell me what it is and I'll make sure I plug that gap. But I think we really should be focusing on selfless marketing right now. Really think about adding value to people and how can you help people.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. You mentioned something a couple of times now, about, you mentioned it when you talked about Harrods, and you kind of touched on it again now. Sort of this difference between just sort of putting content out there and being social and engaging. You just mentioned as well that you ask for feedback.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because I think, I mean, I know for myself, and I know some of the ladies on the call as well, it's sometimes hard to work out, like, what does engaging on social media actually really look like in a way where it helps, and it's not like me awkwardly talking to people I don't know on the other side of the world.
I think for me, what underpins engagement is listening, is social listening. So what I used to do at Harrods was I would spend, and it would be on a weekend when I had time. So I would allocate sometimes half a day just to monitoring conversations and seeing what people are actually saying about the brand. What are they saying about their experiences in the store?
Mm.
So to give you an example, I was actually sat at my desk one day and a lady had tweeted how she'd brought her grandmother to Harrods that day for afternoon tea. So I saw this, I knew where they were exactly because I obviously knew which restaurants were which. So I rang the manager for that restaurant and said, look, I've just seen this on Twitter. This lady is in with her grandmother. It's her grandmother's, I think it was 90 something birthday. Can you take them a little cake or something? Just say, we've seen on it's your birthday. Want just wish you happy birthday. And, it's things like that. It's like social listening is so important. I think sometimes what people do is they put out content not to be kind of not and I'm not saying they're doing this to be cruel or anything, but sometimes they're thinking of themselves. Like from a business point of view, you're thinking, right, I am the social word. What do I want people to know about my business? I'm kind of thinking about myself instead of thinking, actually, what does my customer want to see? What does my audience want to see? And these are the kind of things that underpin engagement. And engagement, it can be something as basic as a like. You don't necessarily have to reply to anyone. And if you're in a situation where you have tons of followers, it's not always possible to reply to everybody. But I would say social listening is really, really important. I put a lot of time and effort into actually listening and monitoring the conversations that are taking place. So if I am going to kind of input myself into that conversation, I do it in a way that is relevant and appropriate and helpful to the person on the other end, rather than just saying, oh, I've got this product, please buy it. That's not the way to sell to people, because you're just going to annoy people. If you just go straight in there with the hard sell, people aren't stupid as well. They know when you're just trying to palm something off on them. So it's really about listening to people and understanding people. Like there was one lady, one customer at Harrods, she loved the color pink. So whenever we were walking through the store, we'd take a picture of something pink and we might DM it to her. Oh, we saw this and we thought of you because we know you love pink. Little things like that. We saw that she bought a house. She mentioned that she tweeted something about being a homeowner. So we arranged kind of surprise and delight thing where we sent a little hamper to her saying congratulations on owning your first home, because we saw that information on Twitter. So it's things like that. It's really listening to the conversation. Don't just jump in because you're trying to sell your product or your service. Really listen to what people are saying and tap into that, because ultimately it's about making a connection with people. It's about forming a human connection with somebody, be it digitally. So it's really, that's how I always think about it. And I think about how I would want to be treated. I would love it if somebody, like, I I collect dresses, so I collect vintage dresses, and they used to be this vintage company. They're no longer in existence, unfortunately. But I was tweeting saying how it was a really, really hot day, but I was waiting in for a delivery for this company before I went out to enjoy the sunshine. Anyway, the delivery turned up. Not only did they turn up with my dress, they turned up with an ice cream, because they'd seen that and I just thought that was so clever. Such
Yeah.
a simple thing,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
and it buys you loyalty, it buys you customer loyalty, you know. And I bought dresses from them literally until they closed, but they actually saw what I tweeted, and the
Yeah.
delivery man turned up with with my dress and an ice cream. And I
Yeah.
just thought that is brilliant. And it's things like that, that's how you
Yeah.
engage with people, that's how you connect with people. It's really, really important. Don't just go in for the hard sell. You will never you will never achieve any kind of social success if you just if you just bombard people with your products or your services.
So it's almost like you're saying there's a real value in the time that you spend on social media that isn't just spent putting things out, but actually looking at what people post, what they say, what's the conversation my followers are having. So almost, would you say there's a way to research your
I just research keywords. So let me think. So I would just research keywords. That's
Mhm.
what I would do. What are the keywords that are relevant to your business? And search I used to search the Harrods name a lot, because what happens sometimes is people are having conversations online. They won't necessarily tag you. They won't necessarily
Yeah,
add you. These conversations could be happening, without any knowledge from yourself. So you have to kind of really think about, the conversations they're having, the type of words people will use, and just search that. That's what I do. I do simple word searches, and it's amazing what can turn up. Or
yeah,
sometimes I always allocate time to go through feeds, to have a look at forums, to see what people are saying, because
yeah,
also what you want to ensure is that if you are going to insert yourself into a conversation or start a conversation with someone, you need to make sure that it's appropriate and it's relevant, and you can only do that when you do your homework.
yeah. Brilliant. Um, Maybe one more question, because you've spoken a little bit around your experience with Harrods, around the experience with your business. A lot of us on this call, whether it's a side hustle or the main thing that we do, are really doing small startup work.
Yeah.
And small can range from literally just starting to we've been going for a while, but small. So when it comes to really making use of this time of lockdown, you talked a little bit about cutting through something as simple as generating more followers,
Yeah.
things like that. What are some points of advice that you would give us, especially as a small business? You spoke about the social engagement, you spoke about those kind of things, but really specifically around generating followers and building a profile in this season. Is it even possible in this season with the noise?
It's definitely possible to grow your following. It's always possible to grow your following. But what I'm going to say, which I know some people would not necessarily agree with me, is obviously having followers is great. I'm not saying it's not. But if there's one thing you should focus on, is the quality of that following. There is no point in having 1,000 followers or more if they're just vanity followers. People who are not interested in your products, they're not interested in your services. Ultimately, your social media is there to support your business. Your business isn't there to support your social media. So if you're going at it from that point of view, your following needs to be a quality following. It is better to have 100 engaged people who support your business, who support your ethos and your brand and will buy your product, than to have 1,000 or more followers who are just there as a numbers game. The actual followers and things like likes, they're a vanity metric. I'm not saying they're not important. They're very, very important. But if you are keen to build followers, ensure you are building a quality following. Ensure the people that you are connecting with are people who are interested in what you have to say, interested in what you're selling, be it a physical product or a service. That's the first thing I would say. And
Yeah.
if you want to grow your following, I think what we're seeing a lot now is collaboration and partnering. So collaborate. If there's somebody, if there's another organization that you have synergy with and they have a bigger following than you, that's going to potentially increase your reach.
Yeah.
So maybe partner with them, providing there's the right synergies there. So I think collaboration is very, very important, because we all know that it's very hard to grow organically now, and
Yeah.
not everybody has a big budget for advertising. I don't. I am a one-woman band. I pull in people as and when I need to, but majority of the stuff done is done by me.
Yeah.
So, you know, think about who you're working with, think about who you can partner with, and reach out to people. You know, people now more so than in the past are really massively collaborating together, which is great to see. So I
Yeah.
would say that's another thing as well. Look at who you can partner with and reach out to them. The other thing I would say is create quality content. And again, this goes back to the selfless marketing and adding value. You
Yeah.
want to create content that people will want to share, people will want to engage with. So that's what I would say. Focus on the quality of your following, the quality of who you follow, and the quality of your content. And if you can partner with other people who have bigger followings than yourself, because that will ultimately drive some traffic to you, then I would certainly recommend doing that. Obviously, if you can do paid advertising, if you have a budget for that, then great. But we don't all have budgets for advertising. I don't have budget all the time for advertising. So, and I'm a small business. So,
Yeah.
but I would say focus on quality. Quality matters over quantity, especially with social media. There are so many accounts out there that have hundreds of thousands of followers, but they're just vanity followers. They're
Yeah.
not like there was an example a few months ago of a girl. I think she has over 1 million followers. I can't remember her name. She brought out a t-shirt range, I think it was. And obviously when she posts, she gets lots of likes. But then when she launched her product, no sales.
Wow.
And it's
Yeah.
like, well, you know, you've got all of this following and
Yeah.
it hasn't translated into sales, which tells me they're just vanity followers. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having lots of followers. It's
Yeah.
great having lots of followers. But in her case, she has tons of followers. And when she actually came to sell her product, nobody bought it. So, you know,
Interesting.
the quality of that following is really, really, really important. And like one of the best people I know, she's no longer on in social media. She had 500 followers and she was a beauty blogger.
Right.
And every time she posted something, she'd get something like 2,000 likes. She'd get 500 comments because she bought all the products herself. Nothing was given to her for free. So all of her kind of reviews of those products were authentic and genuine. And she was great. And she did so, so well. And she only had 500 followers. So, you know, quantity does not necessarily equate to quality. For me, it's quality over quantity every time. But yeah, it certainly is possible to grow your following, but just like I say, make sure that it's a quality following that's actually going to impact your business in a positive way.
Amazing. All right, ladies, we're about to open up for questions, so have a think. I'm just going to ask one last question while they come in, and then if you ladies want to start thinking about questions you have for Lisa, because it's such a small group, what we're going to do is I'm just going to unmute people as long as you're comfortable with the fact that you're going to show up on the recording. And if you don't want that, you can just message your question in the chat. But before we get to that, Lisa, one last question. You mentioned the social, what
Social
did
sessions.
social sessions? That's what they were called. Can you just give a little bit more context? Because I know when you and I spoke, you mentioned that this is something that could potentially be helpful for everybody who's watching this right now as well. And how can we engage with the social sessions?
Right, so that, like I said before, the social sessions is something I set up really with my mum in mind. My mum is somebody who uses social media, but she's not an expert. She's her knowledge of social media is quite basic. So, and there are a lot of people out there that don't necessarily know how to do the basics. Now, obviously, for somebody like me, changing, resetting a password, setting up a new account is easy, but for everyone, it isn't easy. And what I tend to find is, especially working in social media myself, when you create, helpful content, you tend to create it with other social media marketers in mind, not the everyday person, not somebody like my mom who just wants to look for like recipes, she wants to look like, if there's like a different recipe for jerk chicken, don't necessarily create content for people like her. So the social sessions came about just so I could create content that for people that was easy to understand. There's no jargon, there's no like, cheesy jargon, which everybody tends to use, which is fine, but it's just a really simple jargon-free way of learning about social media. And all anyone has to do is follow the social word. So it's at the underscore social word, at the underscore social underscore word. So that's all you have to do. And if you've got a question, submit it. If you don't want to leave a comment under one of the posts, you can DM me the question, which some people do because they're a bit embarrassed to ask the questions openly. And that's it really. Just follow the social word, DM your questions or leave a comment and I'll get back to you and answer them. And I'll answer them privately and I'll answer them publicly, just so in case anybody else doesn't know, the answer's there for them as well. But yeah, that's what the social sessions is. It's just a simple jargon-free way of learning about social media, regardless of your level of experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much for setting that up. So, thanks for having a bit of a chat with me. Ladies, any questions, specific questions that you have for Lisa, that can be specific to your business, to what you do? You can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Or, no, I said I'm going to unmute everybody. Why don't I just do that? Unmute all. And then yourself. Oh, I
Oh.
unmuted someone who I shouldn't have unmuted. Sorry. There we go.
Oh.
Technical challenges, guys. So, anyone who still is muted and who wants to say something, you're just gonna have to raise your hand or unmute yourself. Faluke has a question. If
Okay.
you were going to focus on one platform, what would it be and why? I'm assuming we're talking about different social media platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the others that I don't know.
I would advise, if you are going to focus on one platform, the obvious one is Instagram.
Hmm.
First off, I wouldn't advise just focusing on one. I'd say minimum two, just to cover yourself. But I think also you want to focus on the channel where your customer is. And what a lot of people do is they'll just set up everything. And I get why. I totally understand why. But realistically, if your customer is not on Twitter, why are you on Twitter? If your customer's not on Instagram, why are you on Instagram? It doesn't make any sense. And you're just making work for yourself as well. You know, you have to be where your customer is. So there's an argument for both. There is an argument to be on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and, you know, TikTok and Snapchat. I'm not saying that's wrong, but for me, where is your customer? Where is your audience? If your audience are on Facebook, that's where you should be. If your audience are on Instagram, that's where you should be. If your audience are on Twitter, that's where you should be. So for me, it's, you know, it's about where is your customer? Where is your audience? Some people aren't even on Instagram. I know people who don't have any social media.
Yeah.
So for me, it's important for as a business, be where your customer is. I think the thing, obviously, like I said earlier, the obvious one is Instagram. And I think sometimes people get carried away. Like, oh, you know, I'm going to go on Instagram because everybody's on Instagram. And I totally get that. I'm not criticizing anybody for that. But as I said, if your customer is not there, then why are you? You're wasting time. And if you're a small business, you don't have time to waste. You know, if you're wasting time creating content for a channel where your audience isn't active, you're wasting your own time. That's time you could have spent doing something else that's necessary within your business. So I would say it's very important to be where your customer and your audience are.
Amazing. Any other questions? You talked about presenting a business case. What do you put in that business case? I think that's referring to when you were talking about Harrods.
Oh, so I that was just the way that they did things there. But I basically put in some history, some information about the channel. I put in how the content would be laid out, what the content pillars would be. And when I say content pillars, I mean different subject areas. So for them, it would have been women's wear, men's wear, food, beauty, home, and I'm sure there's another one, but I can't remember. So I put in the different content pillars that content would be created under. I gave examples of what sort of visuals we would use, what kind of captions we would use, not hashtags, because I mean, hashtags I would now, but at the time, hashtags weren't a thing. So I would put in history of, you know, some information about the channel, what you intend to do on that channel, what that content is going to look like, and obviously any possible costs. Because obviously if there's a cost to the business, there's already a cost to the business in terms of them employing me to do the job. So in addition to the social media team, what other costs are going to be incurred? You know, maybe you need a photographer, maybe you need a videographer, maybe you need a copywriter. So that's the sort of thing that I put into the business case, and obviously why I thought it was in the company's best interest to have an Instagram account.
Yeah. And can I maybe just jump on that question while everybody else is thinking about questions as well? You mentioned content, quality of content, etc. Obviously, when you came to Harrods, there would have been a team that you could have.
Yeah, I wish I had that team now.
There would have been a resource. It's like, I need this graphic, I need this graphic. How do we do it? Like, just some practical maybe advice on how we create content and what to do and what not to do around content, because I see a lot of things, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I'm not a graphic designer, but we still have to create content.
The beauty is there are so many apps out there that you can use. You know, I do a lot of stuff from my phone. Like I create so much content because I'm always on the go. So I need to be able to create content wherever I am. So I create a lot of content on the go, and apps like Canva is I love Canva. It is amazing. And it just, oh, honestly, Jess, yeah, I love Canva. You create visuals on there that just look like they've been created by a graphic designer. I mean, I have a good eye, but I ain't no designer. So things like apps, let me have a look at my phone actually. So I use Canva a lot. I also use, for editing my pictures, I use an app called Snapseed, which is really, really good for editing pictures. There are apps like Preview, where you can preview the layout of your feed to see what it looks like. So to show you an example, that's my personal account. So all the pictures there are pictures that I've gone out on my actual personal Instagram. You've got things like that. So that's called, what is that one called again? That's Preview. You've got things like Word Swag, which is where it's all one word, Word Swag, where you can create copy visuals. So things like, find an old one. So stuff like this, I don't know if you can see, if you can't see that. So stuff like this, I would have created in Word Swag. So there are so many apps you can use.
Great.
To make your content look super professional. Because as I said, I'm a one-woman band, so I do everything myself. And being a stickler for quality, I can't have anything go out that doesn't look good. So I've had to, like, you have to learn to become your own content creator. Because as you rightfully said before, we don't all have the budgets for designers and creative directors and photographers. It's just not possible. But you can do a lot of stuff yourself. Like I say, I am by no means a designer. I have a good eye, but I'm not a designer. And I use these, I literally live for these apps. That they are amazing. There are so many things that you can do.
Great. Kizzy posted a question. How personal should you get with your content? I find that I get more interest if I show more of a personal element to my posts as opposed to just technical info or briefings related to my business.
I think you should. I think it's good to see an element of the people behind the business. You know, don't forget that before you're a brand or a business, you're a person, and people connect with people. So I do think it's important to share a bit of your journey, because that's what social media is about, forming an emotional connection. You can't form an emotional connection with a graphic or a logo. I mean, you can. I mean, I love Nike trainers, but you know, it's not because of the logo. I just love trainers. But I do think it's important to show, to take people behind the scenes and show a little bit of your personal life. Like I do share, I have two separate accounts. So I have the Social Word and I have Stylisa. And I don't tend to share, I don't share any personal stuff on the Social Word, but how I combat that is by doing the videos. So I post videos daily on stories. But on my personal account, I share my personal stuff. Occasionally I will share personal things, like when I got nominated for the Precious Award a few years ago, I did put a post on the Social Word about that because that's relevant to that and that's business. But I do think it's important to show a bit of your personality. Now I would say be very measured and be very careful what you do, because for me personally, there are some things that I'm happy to share and there are some things I don't. Like some of my family members, they're very private people. They don't like their business being shared. So if I'm spending time with them, obviously I'm not going to post about that. And the same with some friends too. I have friends that aren't on social media and have no interest. So, you know, I don't post anything about them. I don't post anything about my friends' children. That's just my personal thing. I don't want to do that. But there are aspects about my life that I'm very happy to share. Like anybody who follows me knows I love Prosecco, I love chips, and I love dresses, you know, and there's the things that I'm happy to share about me. I think it's important for people to see the personality behind the brand, because that's what people will connect with ultimately. People buy into people. So it's important that you do share some of you with your audience, but not all of you, I would say. Just be mindful, because, you know, once it's out there, nothing, when it comes to the world of digital, nothing ever really dies. So just be mindful that if you are sharing personal information, you know, someone said to me, if you'd be comfortable seeing it on the front of the Daily Mail, then share it. If not, don't do it. I mean, I don't read the Daily Mail, but my kind of publication. But you know, just be mindful of what you're sharing, because you know, once, like I say, once it's out there, even if you delete it, nothing ever really dies. It'll be on a server somewhere. So just bear that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Any other questions for Lisa at this point? You can ask them out loud or you can send them on the group chat. Maybe while we wait, I will ask another question. I'm being very selfish here. Um, and I don't know if that goes too far, maybe into the branding conversation, but we just talked about graphics and things like that. How important is it, especially when you're a small business, um, that there is some consistency? And again, I've just seen lots of different people doing lots of things, lots of different things around consistency around color palettes, fonts. Can I just choose a different font every time I post a graphic, or is it helpful? Okay, talk to us about that.
So consistency, if you think about it, right, your image is what your is basically your brand. It's basically what you're selling to the world. So think about it. So say Nike, for example, if every time they put a post, they change their colors or they change their logo or they change the font of the logo, they wouldn't be identifiable as Nike. Like with McDonald's with the golden arches. As soon as you see those golden arches, you know it's Mackey's.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as KFC, as soon as you see the Colonel, you know it's the KFC, you know it's fried chicken.
Yeah.
It is so, so important to get your brand image right. You know, use the same colors, use the same fonts. You know, don't deviate from that. People need to go on your feed or go whatever area of your business. People need to look at it and instantly recognize it as your brand. And if you are not consistent in terms of how your brand looks, in terms of the colors you use, in terms of your logo, in terms of the font, in terms of the quality of your images, people are not gonna they're not gonna remember your brand, and people are probably not gonna buy into it. You know, there's a reason why. Look at Apple. Apple are the perfect example of a perfect brand image. Like that Apple is instantly recognizable everywhere, and that is what you want to aspire to. You know, and there's no reason why you can't do that. Just because you're a small business doesn't mean you can't be instantly recognizable. It's really important that your brand image is always consistent. It's always the same, regardless of the channel it's been shared on, regardless of who you're speaking to. Your logo, your images, your fonts, all of those things should always be consistent. Your font should always be the same size. You know, headings should all be one size. You know, text, you know, body copy should be one size. All of these things, hashtags should be consistent. You should not only just use non-related hashtags, but you should have your own brand hashtags as well. Like I have hashtag the social word. So these are elements of your brand that have to remain consistent, so that when somebody lands, so if you go on the social word now, you'll see I've changed the branding a little bit. You'll see that the first 9 images, the first 9 posts are all they all follow the same lines in terms of how they look, in terms of the copy, in terms of the colors. Those things are really, really key, and you should never deviate from them. Once they're set, you stick to those, unless obviously you're doing a rebrand, and then obviously it's different.
Brilliant. Arit just posted a question. She said you talked about quantity over quality. However, social platforms work on algorithms. So how often should you post?
Oh, nice, quality over quantity.
Yeah,
um,
that's what we meant.
when it comes to how often you should post, you should look at your insights. Your insights and data inform what you do and when you do it. So, for example, for my own account, for the social word, the most popular times for me to post, depending on what day it is, tend to be 12, 3, 6, and 9 p.m. 9 a.m. doesn't really work. I post things at different times to test them, but it's important. It's important to look at your insights, because that will inform what you produce, what content you produce, in terms of what works and what doesn't, what times your followers are most active, and what days your followers are most active, what countries are, where, you know, which are the highest amount of followers you have from which countries, which cities. A lot of people, you know, are afraid of data. The second I start talking about data and analytics, people get bored. But the thing is, your data should be your best friend. I'm not somebody who necessarily loves analytics, but I literally look at my analytics every single day. And if I see that something hasn't worked, like I shared something on my personal account the other day at 9 p.m. and it did really well. So I thought, oh, let me try that again. I did it a day later and it didn't do as well. And this is the thing. Everything you have to remember, everything that you put out on social media is a test. So just because something worked well at 9 p.m. on Monday doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work well at 9 p.m. on Tuesday or 9 p.m. on Wednesday. Yeah. So really get into the detail of your data and your insights, and post your content based on that. You know, obviously try different things outside of that, because you will always get that fluke. Then you post something at like 347 and it does really well. You know, you're always going to have that, but I think that the key here is to test, but also make sure that you always on a daily basis are looking at your insights and your data. That's really important. I know it's not the sexy side of social, but it's one of the most important.
Yeah, right. Camille, you had a
Yeah.
question.
I did have a question, but I just wanted to ask on the back of that. With stories, do you post whenever you want to, but on the actual feed, do you use it with your insights, or do you do both?
I do both. So I use insights for both stories and feed, but then I will also just post things at random times just to see how it performs. Because like I say, it's not a set science. Sometimes, like I said, the other night I posted that image at 9 p.m. and it did really, really well. But when I did it a day or 2 days after, it didn't do as well. So I do it for both. So I use insights for both stories and for feed, but then also as well, just to see how things work, I'll post outside of those times as well, just to see, you know, what the traction's like on the posts.
Right.
So my actual question was, do you find you get more engagement on your stories or on your feed posts?
I get more engagement on stories.
Yeah,
I definitely get more engagement because stories, I think stories is more throwaway, and it's not that because the feed is always there unless you delete things or you archive them. But with stories, obviously you have highlights, but with stories it's there for 24 hours. And I think as well, once people get onto stories, it automatically moves to that. Once they've seen all of your stories, it automatically jumps to the next one. So people will naturally just stay on it just to see what people are doing or people are saying or people are sharing. But yeah, I tend to find personally that I get more traction on stories than I do on the feed, and you can have more fun with stories as well, I think. So
That's true. And then we had one more question here. Faluke was saying, could you give 2 tips for growing your audience on social? I know you touched on it, but maybe if you've got 2 succinct things that you would say that we can all go away and do now.
engage with people, engage on other people's accounts. Don't just post. The worst thing you can do is just post and then expect people to come to you. If you've only got 50 followers, how are people going to find you? You know, so you need to spend time and do your research as well. Don't just post anywhere, because then there's a danger that you'll look like a bot, which would not be good for your account, and then not, and people wouldn't engage with you. And do your homework, you know, research people who are in your niche and, you know, follow them, comment on their posts, like their posts. You know, that's what that is. That engagement is massively important now. It's more important than the actual number of people who follow you. So make sure you're engaging with people. You know, leave comments on other people's posts, share other people's content, provided obviously it's relevant to what you do. You know, and engage with people. That is a surefire way of building your audience. You know, that it's called social media. And it's amazing how many people don't do what it says on the tin, and that's be social. If you want to grow, be social. You know, and I know it sounds really simple, but a lot of people do not do it. Like they'll just post and they just expect to get likes and comments. It's like that's really not how it works. And the other thing I would say is just be consistent with your messaging and the quality of your content, and make sure, like I said before, you're adding value. You know, help people, because ultimately that's what's going to help you. Don't just post, think, well, I want to get this message out, I want to post this product out or this service. That's great, but you're not necessarily going to get any traction by just posting what you want to say. You need to share what people want to hear. That's ultimately what, you know, that's ultimately how to be, one of the ways of how to be successful in social media. How can you help people? How can I add value to you? I'm not going to add value to you, so I'm just talking about myself and things that I like and things that help me, because that's going to be of no use to you at all. So what can I do with my content that fulfills your needs? That's how you've got to think. If you want to be successful at social, put yourself in the minds and the shoes of your audiences. Don't go at it from your own perspective, because how I like things and how I do things and how I want things is not necessarily how other people want them. So when I'm creating content, I'm not creating it for myself. I'm creating it for the people who follow me.
Yeah, brilliant.
Put yourself in the minds, try to put yourself in the minds of your audience, and think about it from the, you know, from the perspective of a customer. If you were a customer following your brand, what would you want that brand to share?
Yeah.
You know, what would you want them to say to you?
Yeah.
Always put yourself in the mind and the shoes of somebody else, and think, you know what, if I was on the receiving end of this content, what would I expect to see? What would I want to see? What would be helpful or beneficial to me?
Yeah, brilliant. That's really good. We're going to have time for one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. Before we ask that question, just off the back of what Lisa just said, I want to give a book recommendation, which maybe some of you have read. It's called Originals by a guy called Adam Grant. Originals by Adam Grant. He's a sociologist, and he talks about um, basically how to make your idea win. Like, it's such a brilliant book, like changed my life. And he talks, there's a whole chapter, more than a chapter, on everything that you just said, Lisa, around how do we communicate, how do we share knowledge, how do we try and sell something, whose perspective do we speak of. The book changed my life, so he should really start giving me commission. Originals by Adam
It's so
Grant.
important though, because like I say, when people create content, they're creating content with themselves in mind, and that's not the way to do it. The way to create content is to create content with the people that you want to reach, the
Yeah.
people that you want to buy your product. When you think about it, it makes total sense. It's like a
Yeah.
lot of people say people don't speak to a lot of people don't listen to understand, they listen to respond. It's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, you listen to understand and therefore add value. Don't just listen to respond, because that's not going to be helpful to anyone. It's not going to be helpful to your audience, which ultimately won't be helpful to you.
That's called mansplaining. Sorry.
Yes, I say that, but yes.
Hashtag mansplaining. Right. One final question. Does anyone have one final question before we wrap up? Want to honor everybody's time. Yes.
Yeah, Lisa,
Michelle.
do you use business coaching to oversee your plans?
Yes. So I have a group of people, three or four people who I always go and speak to, because the thing with being in your own business is you're very, very close to it, and you don't always necessarily see things in an objective way. You're biased. So for me, whenever I'm doing stuff, if I have an idea, there are three people in particular that I will go and speak to, and they will always give me an honest opinion about what I'm doing, if they think it's a good idea, if they don't. And I always seek external advice, because, you know, no man or woman is an island, and nobody knows everything about everything. And I think it's good to have a fresh pair of eyes looking at what you're doing. So like with the social sessions, for example, I've reached out to these people and said, look, have a look at it, see what you think, let me know. And they've all come back and said, oh, you know, I think it's a really good idea. It's something that people don't generally do. So yeah, I always seek a second opinion from certain people with anything to do with my business. I would never just do something without that advice and that expertise from them and that support.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Lisa.
But one last thing. I've got one
Yes,
last
I was going to say to you, please tell us now, just talk to us about any last thing you want to say. Remind us where we can follow you.
Yeah.
And all of that.
So I've teamed up with two other industry experts, and we have launched the branding brainstorm. So if you go on the social word, so it's at the _social_word, you'll see the link in my bio. We are running a free Zoom branding session next Tuesday, the 28th of April at 7 p.m. So we're going to be talking about social media. We're going to be talking about branding and content creation. We're going to be talking about how to inject personality into your content. And that's completely free for an hour. And that's at 7 p.m. on the 20th of April. So if you want to sign up for that, the link is in the bio for the social word. So just go and sign up. And if you've got any questions, obviously you can DM me or leave a comment under one of my posts.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Anything else you want to say to us, you want to leave us with? We can follow you at the _social_word.
Yeah. All I would say is just if you're posting on behalf of your business, just make sure you are sense checking all of your content before you post it. Get a second opinion if you have any doubts about it. And if you still have doubts about it, don't post. Remember that your content should do three things. It should engage, it should educate, it should entertain. And in terms of from a mental health perspective, just try and practice some social media distancing. Don't spend all of your time on your phone.
Amazing.
Get out in the sunshine. The weather's quite nice at the moment.
Yes. Brilliant. All right, everybody. If you haven't dropped your social media in the chat yet, go ahead and do that. We can all follow each other. I just realized I haven't dropped mine yet, so I'm just going to do that. And then have a great rest of your day. I will be saving this recording, and it will be going up on our precious YouTube, which, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, go ahead and do it. Go to YouTube and enter Precious Online, one word, and we will come up. If you don't put in one word, you will be led to Precious the film. Also interesting, not what we want. Precious Online, one word. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. On there, you can also watch the recording of the last Precious Nights Online. And if you head to our Instagram, you can sign up for Precious Nights Online coming up on the 7th of May. I'm going to just leave this up for a second. If you've copied everybody out of here and followed, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. But you can also feel free to log off, and we'll be having coffee again tomorrow at 3. If you want to join without a theme, it'll just be us. But we have really fun chats. Like we talk about our celebrity crushes and stuff. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.